So, 2 weeks ago, the CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, released a new video for their Marketplace series. And I've watched a few of them, and over the years, I've quite enjoyed the CBC videos. So, this new video is about tipping. And so, let's watch this one.
Ever hear of Secret Santa? We're setting up a store.
You know, I just realized I've never done Secret Santa. Like, ever. I don't really even know what it is. I'm assuming it's some sort of game.
With a secret. It's loaded with hidden cameras and buried mics, all part of a marketplace tipping test.
I wonder, is that illegal? I feel like if it's, you know, whenever I see these sort of social experiment, quote unquote, I always wonder, are they fake? Because if they're not fake, you know, how do they get away with privacy issues? Because some people don't want to be recorded. Or do they not air those clips? But still, you know, it feels pretty like, eh.
How much more will people pay for very little service?
Would you like to add a tip of 18, 20, or 25%?
20 is fine.
20 is fine.
Oh, well, this lady is just like, 20 is fine. So fast, so fast. Well, she didn't pick 18, though. So I guess she's not that cheap, but it's kind of funny. She just went for it. Didn't even think. Did not even think.
I'll give you the dollar tip.
Oh, okay.
Tipping. We've all felt it. It's becoming the norm, whether we like it or not. But we want to know, are businesses taking it too far? And where are those tips really going?
I'm sorry, are they setting this up in a grocery store of some sort? Why would you tip somebody in a grocery store? Maybe they should have picked like a different location.
To find out, we're gearing up and pounding the pavement to hit 100 businesses.
The secret's all in the lid.
And documenting who is asking for a tip and how much.
You guys ready for the bill, please?
We all expect to tip at sit-down restaurants.
There you go. And I'll be right back with the machine for you. Thank you.
That's because servers used to make below minimum wage in Ontario, with the assumption that tips would make up the...
Oh yes, in case it's not clear, I forget, this whole show is set in Canada. So do with that information what you will, but it's not that different than it is in the US, I think.
The rest. That changed in 2022. So why have tip percentages gone up? At every sit-down place we visit, tip prompts start at 15 or 18%.
15, 18, 20.
And go up to 20 or even 22%.
I guess a little more attention on tipping culture these days.
Even servers themselves are pointing it out.
Honestly, tipping culture has gotten a little bit outrageous.
Could those higher percentages be pushing us to tip more? The payment...
I mean, to be fair, percentages are a little misleading. Like, you know, 20% of $10 is $2. 20% of $20 is $4, and so on and so on. If you have a meal and it costs you, you know, $50, that's $10 in tips. So is that comparatively, I mean, the percentage just makes it seem big, but as long as you're not, you know, spending a whole lot of money, you know, if you don't order a lot, the tip shouldn't go up that much, right?
Payment platform Square says 5 years ago, we shell out about 16% in tips. Last year, that jumps to 20%.
Okay, that's concerning. Why is Square keeping track of our tipping data? kind of bring into the question why a payment processor would keep track of consumers' data and what other data they keep track of. Who knows what they have up their sleeves?
In tips, last year, that jumps to 20%. Are you a big tipper?
I am a moderate tipper.
Mike Van Masso studies the economy of food and tipping. He's a professor at the University of Guelph.
Tipping is a social norm. It is something that everybody does. It is an expectation.
Tipping is not a social norm. It is a social norm in America and presumably Canada, but it is literally found nowhere else. That's kind of one of those things where different in culture, there's tipping for different things. In certain culture, the restaurant doesn't have any tip. There's no tip in restaurant, but there are tip in other industry. But in everywhere else, the food service industry does not do tip. So, and then there's some country that doesn't do any tip altogether. So, yeah, it's not the norm. Not at all.
But it does feel like something has changed.
Yeah, I think we've seen an evolution in tipping culture creeping up. But in the last 4 or 5 years, probably since the pandemic, we've really seen a dynamic shift. When restaurants were shut down, we were worried about them surviving. So many of us tipped much higher because we're trying to keep these people afloat. And I think many organizations said, oh, people are tipping more, we'll do it more.
We'll keep this going. It's not just...
So, it's our fault? Is that what this guy is saying? It's our fault that tipping culture has gotten to this point? Because I feel like I have a problem with that. Trying to support and keep small businesses afloat is somehow contributing to the tipping frenzy? I don't think so. That's a bit of a stretch. And also, isn't tipping goes, no, it should, right, go directly towards the server? Like, I always just give them cash to put in their pocket. You know, if I like a server, I'll tip them. But that should go directly to them and not to the... So why would my tip be keeping the restaurant afloat? That makes no sense. That's also very stretched.
Just sit-down restaurants. Check out all the tip prompts popping up at fast food places, including coffee shops.
Small coffee.
And mall food courts.
Well, to be fair, if you eat in a mall food court, you are asking to get ripped off. Tip or no tip?
Big chains and independent shops.
Debit, please.
At almost 2/3 of the fast food places we visit, the terminal asks us if we want a tip. Most recommend between 10 and 20%.
Would you like the receipt? Sure.
There is an option, you know, on those machines, there is an option. It literally said right here, no tip. Do you not see that? I'm circling it with my mouse. Look, it says no tip. Just click on that. I do it all the time. I have no shame.
Thank you.
At a few, up to 30%.
Go ahead.
What do you make of fast food restaurants asking for tips? Where did this come from?
There's more price pressure to keep price down, and there's more wage pressure to pay people more. So ask people for tips in a way that gives our staff a higher wage without us actually having to pay that higher wage.
Back on Hidden Camera, we also noticed some inconsistencies. One coffee shop asks for a tip, another doesn't. One sandwich shop has a prompt, the next, nothing.
It's making us, I would say, more uncomfortable because it's gone outside of the social norm. This inconsistency is also contributing to the discomfort that many of us feel.
Is that true? Is that what you're feeling? The discomfort of the inconsistency? That honestly sounds like hogwash to me. It really... I'm uncomfortable because some places charge for a tip and some doesn't. I don't get that. I should be glad the places that doesn't charge for a tip, because that means they're doing something right, or at least they're paying their employee. But I don't know if I'm uncomfortable with the inconsistency.
And get this, we find many payment systems calculate that suggested tip on top of tax.
I have thought about it, and I've thought, sometime I want to do the calculation myself, but you're sitting there in that moment and you're not going to do it. But it seems like a little bit at the time. But I can see how it adds up for people too.
Well, it does add up, and people don't think about it. Very quickly becomes another dollar or two or more.
That feels illegal. I don't know if that's illegal or not. That feels illegal. Charging tip on top of tax, because remember, tax is not the price of the item. It is what the government takes from you. So you've been charged twice, essentially, for, 3 times, right? You've been charged once for the item, once for the tax, and once now for the tip on top of the tax. So that's like 3-4 times if you count the tax compounding. Oh my goodness. Compounding tax. Yeah, that's a thing now. That is a thing, compounding tax. Goodness.
That's coming out of your pocket in a time that we're feeling inflation pressure anyway. And so I think it's almost this hidden thing.
But some small businesses are giving customers a break. Ryan Hamilton owns Yow Wings in Brampton, Ontario.
It comes up automatic, and I just put no tip.
And that feels like the right thing to do.
That is the right thing to do.
He skips the tip before handing over the machine and lets people offer one if they want.
Why do you skip the tip?
Because I don't want any customer to feel obligated when they come in our establishment. It's not about the service anymore. It's not about the food, right? It's just it's just an added expense to the customer. That's what it's become now. So it's not gratuity anymore.
Do you think people are feeling more pressured now than in the past?
100%. People are struggling. You don't know, what a person. What
a low bar we have sank to. This guy is praised because he did the right thing, but what a low bar. For opting out of a tip is now considered a heroic act.
But it's not just customer goodwill pushing tip culture. There's some psychology behind tip creep, driven by technology.
There's no doubt that we're not only being asked for more tips in more places, we're being asked much more aggressively. And so, a little jar is fairly innocuous. Now with the point of sale, it's in your face. You have to explicitly decide not to tip. And if you look at the psychology, this sort of framing where we have the low point, the midpoint, and the high point, people feel bad about going to the bottom. I would argue that as Canadians...
I'm sorry, people feel bad about what now? For a second there, I thought he said, never mind.
We have a guilt gene just built into us.
Nice.
Yeah, we want to be nice. And so I think that that's built in. But because there's an expectation that we tip, we feel bad.
Wait a minute. So then what's our excuse? They're Canadian. They have a gene that feel guilty. They're just built nice, or so they say. Then what is our excuse? We're Americans. We, are entitled Karens. If we don't like something, we'll just scream in the poor little cashier's face. Like, what is our excuse for tolerating this BS?
So, will you speak up if asked to tip without getting any real service?
Do you really want to know the answer to that question? Like, ask any American, do you really want to know the answer to that question?
Today's actually our grand opening.
Back at our holiday shop, that's what we're putting to the test.
It's a good little stocking stuffer. Which one would you like?
These are $3?
They're $3. And we also have these like adorable little mice.
You guys say Todd, right?
Yes, we do.
Some shoppers lay down the law.
Would you like to add a tip of 18, 20, or 25%? A lot of businesses are asking these days, so they told me that I should ask. Would you like to add a tip?
No?
But the majority agree to give us a tip just for putting an item in a bag.
You can put 18 or 20 or 25%.
20 is fine.
20 is fine. That is very generous of you.
Since you're a nice woman, I'm going to do 18.
That is super sweet of you.
You know, it's first of all, it's very generous of people. People are just naturally so kind and good. But it's moments like these that makes me kind of wonder, like, what the hell am I doing with my career? You know, like, what the hell am I doing with a job when I can literally just ask people for a tip from doing nothing and get it? Although, what is the difference between this, right, standing asking for a tip? What is the difference between this and a bigot? I mean, isn't this kind of begging people for money? I don't know.
I don't know what's what anymore. I buy a coffee and they're asking for a tip. I don't know.
Time to...
Well, to be fair, the people at the coffee counter are the barista that make your coffee. So that's a little different than, you know, the people that are just standing around doing nothing, but okay.
Break the news that our shop isn't what it seems.
I just want to share something with you guys. I'm actually with Marketplace, so there are some hidden cameras over here. Bill, Dave?
And I don't want to feel guilty. I'd rather paying what
I never feel guilty. I don't know about you, but I never feel guilty.
feels fair for a service.
I actually thought most people wouldn't tip. I didn't think they'd see the value of tipping on basically no service. But it almost seemed like this is $10. Would you like to pay $11.50 instead?
You're essentially just taking a and in many cases, that's what we're seeing happen. So if we can keep prices low to attract you and then charge you a 15 or 20% premium at the end of that experience, who wouldn't think that's a good idea?
Tipping on winter decor may sound unusual, but we are inspired by some other businesses, like this auto shop. We visit with hidden cameras rolling to get new windshield wipers installed.
Oh, there's a tip option. 10%, 15%, 20%. Is that because of the system, or what's the reasoning that it...
I think it's because of service.
And at this jewelry store.
Was that a tip prompt that popped up?
They tell us their customers want a tip option.
We're restoring, heirloom jewelry, things like that, and especially people want custom things. So sometimes people want. I've never heard of that. Tipping is usually custom. Yeah, and we're just at different spots. So, so not an obligation by any means.
Thank you.
We even see it at a bridal shop.
It's not mandatory, but if you would want, you can tip the stylist. They tip everywhere.
Well, again, bridal shops are a huge ripoff. So, I'm not surprised.
Now it's there's no meaning to it, but I feel service places you can tip if the service is good, right?
Okay, so this counts as a service place.
Kinda, yeah.
Should they be tipped? Maybe they should just be paid more. Yeah,
but a lot of those automatic tipping thing, the tip doesn't actually go to any person, does it? That's the whole point of this video, isn't it? Is that a lot of those automated tipping prompt doesn't actually go to a specific employee. They just go to the owner. So...
What about when you don't interact with anyone? In our spot check of 100 businesses, we come across self-serve kiosks.
So, before we continue, the practice of tipping in other industry is not new. It's been around since forever. It's just that nowadays North American, right, Americans and Canadian are now discovering it for the first time because they never had it. It's just that, previously in those other industry, those other sectors, if you have somebody providing you a service, and maybe this is just permanent to my family, but we would always kind of just put a little, I don't know, a little folded up bit of cash in their hand as a tip, just as a way to make sure that they actually get the job done, and that, let me tell you, when you put cash into someone's hand, it dramatically improves their attitude. It is like a cure-all for attitude. It doesn't matter what illness they have. It doesn't matter what, how their personality is. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter. When you put something into someone's hand, when you put some cash into someone's hand, it dramatically improves the quality of the service you're getting. And that could be anything. When you work with a mechanic, when you have, somebody, a repairman coming to your home, when you, have a gardener or literally anything, any service. Or even at a shop, right? Even at a shop, hell, even in the hospital. Wink, wink. Sometimes putting a little something into the person you're talking to, into the hands of the person you're talking to, is the correct way to do things. But now it's in your face, and apparently you're exposed to it for the first time. So, yeah.
Asking for tips.
All right, I can tip 10%, 15%, 20%, and the tip is already calculated for me.
And even online, some places aren't waiting until you check out to ask for a tip. Look what this bakery asks for on a delivery platform.
Please use this menu item as a gratuity. And there's a $5 option and there's a $3 option.
Well, okay, the tipping on a vending machine and a online, that's getting a little out of hand. I can understand if there's an option for donation, maybe small business require, whatever, but tipping online is crossing the line. Totally.
It extends beyond food to travel sites too.
Okay, what city should we stay in now? Let's say Calgary.
Another example of how tipping is creeping up where you might not expect it.
That's wild. I've never seen this on travel sites before. I mean, I've booked hotels online, but to say we saved you some money, so give us some money back, it just seems counterintuitive.
And check this out.
Let's go with medium. Support the designer's talent. I mean, lower than we would see out at fast.
If you have a t-shirt making business and you're the one who designed it, isn't the designer's talent your talent? Is it not just tipping the owner? What?
It's food or other businesses, but 5%, 10%, 15%.
But see, look where you started there. You said, oh, it's lower. So automatically you were less inclined to push back. So that could be a strategic element there. But this goes counter to anything that this is a service. To me, it is outrageous that we're being asked to tip for online. I think unless we push back, creep is going to continue, both in terms of the amount we're asked for and the places we're asked for it. If we reward the behavior, it's going to come up more and more places. To me, it's accelerating.
If people want to push back, how do they push back without affecting the person that is in front of them?
The reality is that people who are asking for tips are changing the rules, and we don't have to follow those rules.
Says employers can't keep any of the tips you give. In Ontario and BC, employers are only entitled to a portion of tips if they directly help a customer. Otherwise, it's not allowed. Some call it tip theft. So, we're back undercover in Ontario to see if those rules are being followed and who keeps the extra money you're being prompted to give. At this place, workers say they don't see a cent of the tips. Do you get these tips?
No.
You don't get?
No, we don't get.
Does the owner take them?
Yeah.
We hear it's happening at big chains too.
If I leave a tip, do you get this tip?
No.
You don't get it. Whoa. Do you know who gets it?
The owner.
If I leave you a tip, do you get this tip?
No.
No?
This is why, people. This is why, as I said earlier, leave a little something directly in the palm, in the hands of the people. Do it under the table. I don't care if you have to tie in the bathroom. If you want to give somebody something, you need to put it in their hands. If there's a jar, chances are the owner's hand is in it. If it's a system, chances are it goes directly into the owner's hands. If you want to tip the person in front of you, I'm afraid the only thing you can do is put it into their hands and do it discreetly. Also, some places do have, a tip sharing policy, which I don't know if I support that. I know people in the back of the restaurant, feel like they deserve a bit of the tips. But most of the time, the tip I give out is based on the service of the wait staff. Whether or not the food is good that will decide whether or not I come back. But the cost of that food should already include the labor for the back house. Do you understand? The cost of the food should already include the labor for the back of the house, for the staff in the back, the chef and the cooks and all that.
Do you know who gets it?
Some cases they didn't know. In some cases they asked me, should I be getting this tip?
Mike Von Masso is a food economist who studies tipping. What does he think about employers who pocket tips?
Some of those places are actually breaking the law, but it's easy to hide, particularly at these places that are non-traditional tipping places where staff aren't even thinking that they should be getting tips.
Mike says there needs to be more transparency about where tips really go.
The perception that most of us have is that person that we're interacting with is the one getting the tip, or at least a share of that tip. And if they're not, then again, it's going to increase our cynicism. I think it's always worth asking.
At least 2 employees at 6 different restaurants tell us they don't get their tips. We're not naming those restaurants in an effort not to identify the employees we speak with.
You should. Absolutely name them, shame them. Absolutely.
In response, 2 of those restaurants tell us employees should be getting tips and they're investigating further. 2 say their employees are misinformed, although 1 admits to using tips to pay some business expenses, although they say they won't anymore. 2 don't.
Oh my God. You run your business the same way, like a 3-year-old, isn't it? Oh, I got caught. I promise I won't do that anymore. Aww.
Respond.
You can leave whatever tip you'd like. Do you know what I mean?
They have good service, they're gonna get a tip. But if they don't, they ain't gonna get a tip.
If you don't want to tip, you don't tip.
Okay. No, that's the end of that.